Gotta say, 4.5 hours is never enough of Steve Korecki, and he did not give me the official pass off, but I'm taking the ball anyway. Hey, everybody, welcome to Here's the Scoop from NBC News. I'm Yasmin Vossoughian. This is our live primary election podcast, the first major primary of the midterm season. It is a very big one, and as you all well know, because you have been watching Korecki for hour to hour, that the polls are closed across the country, from Texas to North Carolina to Arkansas. And we have a lot of questions that we want to answer on this podcast tonight. Have incumbents survived these races or not? Who's going to win out, MAGA or institutional Republicans? What type of candidate do Democrats actually want? And then where is this all leading, right? We're looking towards November, and we're even going to talk, you guys, tonight about 2028. But with that, I want you to be involved in this broadcast tonight. So I want you to submit your questions. We want to hear from you. Post a question on our YouTube page, and we're going to try and work it in as well. And then if you're not on YouTube, and I'm reading a card here, and that is why I'm looking down for folks that are listening. I'm looking down for folks that are watching. You're seeing me read this card. Use your photo app to scan the QR code below or on the side of the screen, and it's going to take you right to where you need to be and post your questions. I have to introduce the panel that is sitting besides me, including, by the way, Steve Korecki. Do not go anywhere because Steve Korecki is joining us. But we also have Korecki and Korecki. They are not they are not related. Natasha Korecki.
We're still a killer duo, though.
Yeah, senior national political reporter joining us tonight. Timm on my left, senior political reporter as well. And then Jon Allen, senior national political reporter, all here to break it all down over the next 90 minutes or so. But of course, who do I have with me? The man of the hour, Steve Korecki. And Steve, you thought you were getting away from us because you said, oh, guys, I'm done. 4.5 hours is enough. It is not enough because I need you back to break everything down. But I want you to start with this. I want you to start, Steve, with what we don't know and what is happening in Texas, specifically with Senate Democrats.
Yeah, well, so two things, I guess. I have the Republican here, but this is happening with Senate Democrats because I think one piece of this story is that Senate Democrats want Ken Paxton to be the nominee in this Republican primary to unseat John Cornyn.
Yeah.
3/4 of the vote is in here, and Cornyn has been resilient so far. One thing we don't know, who is going to finish first in this Republican primary. Cornyn has been leading all night. He just got a very good piece of news in Williamson County, right outside of Austin. He is winning big there and just padded his lead by an extra 7,500 votes. Also encouraging for Cornyn, we have been tracking the same day vote as it comes in. Most of what's coming in now, but most of what came in early was the early vote. The question is always, does the same day vote look different? Is it more pro-Paxton? Paxton's only winning the same day vote, currently 42-40 over Cornyn. That may not be enough to get him past Cornyn. Cornyn has an opportunity here to finish first in this preliminary and have unexpected momentum going into that runoff with Paxton. And of course, Cornyn's been trying to get that Trump endorsement. Is that something that could help him get it? But so the Democratic primary, I think the picture there may be a little bit clearer. Let's call that one up here so you can see this has been a very good night, I think, for James Tallarico. And it's now a 113,000 vote plurality that he enjoys over Jasmine Crockett. That's almost 7 points. And I think a couple ingredients have gone into this. Number one, he has made incursions into Jasmine Crockett's backyard. So the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, really around here, her political base is in Dallas. Like 30% of the vote is going to come out of here. But you can see it's not all Crockett's blue here. You got Tallarico blue, too, north of Dallas. These are big pieces of real estate. Collin County, Denton County right next door. These are double-digit Tallarico margins here. The suburbs here where you got a lot of college-educated professionals here. Tallarico doing very well, able to put some wins on the board in these counties. In Crockett's backyard. Also, he's rolled up massive margins around Austin, his political base. And I think there was some question here about where the Hispanic vote would go. Well, it's very clear. Take a look at South Texas here, where you've got some heavily Hispanic counties right on the border, where Brownsville is Cameron County, almost a 30-point Tallarico margin. McAllen here, Hidalgo, more than 2-1. Go up to Webb County, where Laredo is, more than 2-1. Go out to West Texas, again, almost 30 points in El Paso County. Very consistent here. It's clear Tallarico's won the Hispanic vote. He's won it big. It's why he's been able to, throughout the night, really build this lead statewide. Crockett has had Dallas County, lots of issues in Dallas County, I know, but we have more than half the vote in from there. She did well. She didn't do as well as I think she wanted to. She's done very well in East Texas, where there's a large black population. She's doing good in Harris County, where Houston is. But again, that lead she has there only translates to about a 16,000 vote plurality. She's facing a deficit of over 100,000 here. So it's just there's more breadth to the support that Tallarico has demonstrated tonight.
Hey, Steve, so with Yasmin Crockett, does she have the ability to make up what we are still missing in Dallas County?
No, not a gap like 111,000. I can show you here. We think it's about 60%. There's a lot of questions here about what's going to count with these provisionals and stuff here that's beyond my abilities at the moment. But roughly speaking here, you can see that that's about 190,000 votes that are in Dallas County. She's won. This is the early vote you're looking at. So this had nothing to do with today. This was all cast like weeks ago. She's netted a 43,000 vote plurality from that. What do we think is left here? When we say 61%, we're talking about maybe 120,000 votes here. Yeah. Probably max. 120,000 probably max. And again, you're looking, if you're Crockett, at a statewide gap of 111,000 votes. Yeah, sure, you win 100% of those maybe. She's winning 60% of the early vote. That leaves a lot to make that up.
So, Steve, full disclosure here for the audience, just to understand, we had planned that you and I were going to switch off and you were going to kind of go to bed because we thought everything was going to be in and wrapped up. But instead, we are keeping you here for the next 90 minutes or so because we're still waiting for results. So we're going to be toggling back and forth with you because I want to look through all of these results as they're coming in because we are still waiting for a lot of things. Can you just talk quickly, Steve, about why it is we haven't gotten these results in yet?
Yeah, I mean, look, I keep saying this early, same day. The way it works in Texas is so many people vote early. It's the majority of all the vote, and they can count that up ahead of time before the polls close. And these counties just release massive batches of vote pretty quickly after the polls close. You'll get 2/3 of the vote, but that same day vote, the stuff that folks go out to the polls and do today, it can be agonizingly long in some of these counties. And so you're just waiting for that sort of second piece of the puzzle to kind of come into place.
Okay, Jane, I want to bring you into the conversation here because I know you've had some new reporting on what's actually happening in Dallas County and why there was this mix-up. You've got now the Texas Supreme Court involved in this. Can you walk us through what has happened there?
Yeah, so the Texas Supreme Court overruled, at least on a temporary basis, a lower court that had said you could vote for 2 more hours in Dallas County because all of these voters were so confused about the change. So Texas voters are really used to using countywide voting, where you can go kind of anywhere. And they did countywide voting through early voting. So yesterday you could go vote somewhere where today you had to go to your assigned precinct center.
And this is different than it used to be.
This is different than it used to be.
And why is that?
Definitely years past. They've done this before, but they haven't done it in a while. And it's just because it's you have to find a very narrow place to go vote. You have like a tiny, you know what I mean? It's like your exact precinct, a small number of voters in each spot. This also means that Republicans had a different location than Democrats to go vote. So families might be splitting up to go vote today. And it's just confusing.
The issue, though, is also that there was this decision made by a lower court judge essentially saying you can extend the voting for 2 hours because the Democrats were saying, listen, there are folks that still need to vote that haven't been able to vote because they're confused about where they're supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
And then you have the Texas Supreme Court coming back and saying, no, that's not going to work. So what happens to those votes? I mean, do we know how many people actually voted in that extension of 2 hours?
So because it's a court order, all of those ballots would have been provisional, the people who got in line after 7 p.m. Because as you know, there may have been people who got in line before 7 that were also voting after 7. It's the people who got in line after 7. Those ballots will be provisional ballots.
Yeah.
And the Supreme Court has said, put those in a box on their own, and we're going to decide on this later. So we're waiting to hear how many people actually voted after 7 o'clock and how many people and whether or not we count those ballots. I mean, you don't put ballots in a box and say keep them separate unless you're thinking about tossing them. So that's what we're waiting to find out. But this is in Dallas County. It is very important to Yasmin Crockett. That is her base and her stronghold. So this could be very influential.
Well, I mean, Yasmin Crockett is already saying she's already alleging disenfranchised voters, John. Right? That is kind of the statement that she made at her campaign headquarters a few hours ago at this point. No matter what comes out of this evening and the way in which Steve laid it out for us, it doesn't seem like she can make up the difference there's going to be an issue when it comes to, it seems, the Crockett campaign and whether or not they agree with the final call here.
My guess is what you're seeing here is a placeholder argument for her, right? If it becomes close, if she feels like there's an opportunity to contest the race, then perhaps this is the thing that she will rest on. You're looking at the numbers. Steve's been describing the numbers, hasn't called it yet, the final call, but we can all see what that gap is and how far it would take for her to get close. It's not a huge victory, but we're looking at 5% or so for Tallarico. That's not something that you're going to make up with the argument that some of these voters were disenfranchised by the timing of when the polls closed in one county, or even if you were to do a few counties. So unless she makes up a pretty strong gap, I think you will see that argument fall away. She will also get a ton of pressure from within the Democratic Party to concede if she's losing and to not make an argument that there is election rigging, because the Democrats have tried very hard over the course of the last 4 years to be the party that doesn't accuse the elections of being fraudulent and rigged, because they watched what Donald Trump did in 2020.
We're going to get into kind of the nitty gritty of the Tallarico versus Crockett a little bit later on, but I kind of want to get your top line, Natasha, takeaway as well.
Yeah, I mean, sort of the same, along the lines of what you were saying. I mean, certainly Craig was trying to lay the groundwork tonight, early on. This is going to be my argument.
Yeah.
And it obviously is very important to her.
But by the way, that was also kind of part of her campaign, right? Tallarico was like, I'm going to unite people, but I'm also going to bring people from the center to vote for me, maybe even Trump voters to vote for me. Whereas Jasmine Crockett is like, I'm going to bring people out that have maybe never voted before, right? She is actually looking for the kind of quote unquote disenfranchised voter.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, and so she does have an argument along those lines. And there is going to be a ton of pressure for her to just, if the numbers continue as they are. Just talking to, Tallarico advisor who says they're feeling like they just want someone to call it. They think that, they think that they've won and they're just waiting for somebody to call it. But of course, we have to see how this plays out. And if it turns into something ugly, that will be a mess for Democrats. Right now, they're in a very good position, just considering what's happening on the Republican side.
I want to remind folks, as you guys are watching, we want to hear from you because we're trying to get your questions answered by my panel. And of course, Steve Korecki. Everybody's got questions for Steve Korecki. Post a question on our YouTube page, and we're going to try and work it in as well. And if you're not on YouTube, use your photo app to scan the QR code below. You see it on your screen right there. And it's going to take you right there, right? Whatever questions you have. I mean, we're going to filter them. We're not going to ask every single thing because some awkward things do come in. But nonetheless, we're going to try and get your questions answered. Korecki, I want to go back to you because you were talking at the top as I came to you. I asked about the Dems, but you went to Republicans, and I get it. Something was breaking with the Republicans. But let's talk about that now. Cornyn and Paxton and where we are with things.
Yeah, let's call that one back up on the screen here. Right, so it's about a 30,000 vote gap here. Cornyn leading Paxton. Cornyn's been resilient with this lead all night. So two things are happening right now. One is almost over. You just see a few, the gray means no vote, yet you see a few gray patches. None of these are really our population centers that we're looking at right here. So there is still some of that early vote to come in. That'll be early vote that gets reported out first there. But the thing that's really overtaking now is the same day vote. So, what we can sort of gather here is that Cornyn has won the early vote, okay? There's still a little bit more of it to come, but he's going to end up winning the early vote here probably by about 3 points. The question is, how different is that same day vote that's going to be the rest of what fills in these counties? Paxton, we've been tracking it so far, is winning that same day vote about 42-40, about 43-40. That's not enough because there's two buckets here. The early vote is the big one, and the same day vote is the smaller one. And if Cornyn's winning this one by 3, and if Paxton's winning this one by 3, there's going to ultimately be a difference favoring this side. So Cornyn is on the right side of the equation right now. The same day vote would have to get more friendly to Paxton if he's going to make up that gap. But that's a small gap. You could see it. It's still certainly possible. But the possibility that I think would have been a surprise to a lot of people coming into tonight that Cornyn finishes first is very much there.
Korecki, do we know at all the makeup of the Wesley Hunt voter?
I don't know too much more than this is his base. Harris County here, and this is 10% of the vote's going to come out of there, and this has just been he's had
I guess my question is, do they tend to be more MAGA voters or tend to be more institutional Republican voters?
Well, I mean, you could take a look right here. Take a look. One way to see this is where Cornyn has done the best tonight, where I think he would do the best in the runoff, okay, would be right here in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex here. Okay, so like Dallas, but again, north of Dallas. He's only up about 2 points right there in Collin, Denton. So, I mean, these are going to be, see how Wesley Hunt is doing there.
Yeah. Certainly
this is going to be, Williamson County, Travis County, this is going to be it, versus like somewhere over in East Texas where I think it's, again, this is actually a surprisingly decent showing for Paxton. I haven't gotten to go through East Texas, but this is more what I would expect out of East Texas here for Paxton. And you can see Hunt, he's running about consistently in both of them. You could see here. So I don't know if you can look at this and make I couldn't look at this right now and make a much more of an answer than I've just given you.
No, but I appreciate that. I think one of the things that's standing out, you guys, as we're taking a look at this is literally one of the most, if not the most expensive Senate primary race ever run, right? And if you're taking a look at the numbers, I believe it's $100 million almost alone on the Republican side. $78 million spent on Cornyn's campaign alone. I mean, obviously money is working and money is talking because he's came up on top. And that's not, Jon Allen, what was predicted when it came to Paxton and Cornyn. There was a real concern, it seemed, within the Republican Party that Paxton was going to come out on top. And they felt as if he was beatable in a way, possibly, by Democrats in a general matchup.
Yeah, I think there still is that concern among Republicans, right? There is still that concern after you saw what happened tonight, or what's continuing to happen tonight. Certainly Cornyn doing better than a lot of people expected. On the other hand, he's been a senator for 4 terms, and he's running in a primary and is, looking at 42.5% of the vote or so. You can't feel great about that if you're John Cornyn. You can't feel terrible about where you stand if you're Paxton. You talked about all the money. Now we're going to see more money spent in a runoff between these two guys.
Well, that was the other concern, is that they said if in fact it's Ken Paxton as the candidate, right, they're going to have to spend a heck of a lot more money because of all the scandal that is surrounding him. But either way, there's going to be money when it comes to this runoff.
And this is not money they want to spend in Texas. Republicans want that money to go elsewhere in the country. Texas should be so easy for them.
Right.
And it's a big, expensive media market. And if you have to spend for 12 more weeks of a runoff, if you have to spend to defend Paxton through potentially divorce details that may come out, I mean, this is not what Republicans want to do, but...
And it's exactly what Democrats want to happen. I mean, this is the ideal scenario for them. That would be the ideal scenario for them if they had a Paxton. It's more of an unknown quantity, a little bit more of an unknown quantity than Cornyn. And, they can just rip it apart and force Republicans to spend in what typically is a very safe state.
Natasha, how much of this is a Wesley Hunt problem? I.e., the third guy came in and he took the votes away from the two.
Well, there is a lot of
and now we're in a
Republicans.
runoff.
Yes. I mean, look at the numbers. The numbers speak for themselves. That would have made the difference potentially to avoid a runoff one way or another. The other takeaway, though, is that we kept hearing that Paxton was going to run away with this, that, Cornyn was going down, and that did not happen either. So this is going to be really interesting for the Republicans, and it's going to be, vital here that they don't drag this out so long and don't muddy up each other so much that it ends up helping Democrats in the state. And
to the point you were making, Yasmin, and that Steve helped make with his big board, we don't know what Wesley Hunt's voters are going to do.
Yeah.
We're not sure. We don't know how they're going to break.
Yeah.
So could be either way. There is going to be a dogfight over them. John Cornyn's not going to go down easily. And the Republicans in Washington, the Senate Republicans are not going to let one of their own go down easily. They are going to your point, spend, and raise. Now, I'm of the view that raising money is a bottomless pit in politics. And so it's not necessarily bad to spend a lot of money, because you can go back to the same donors or a new set of donors and ask them for money in Texas, and go back ask them for money in North Carolina, and pick all the states that you want to say before you do the Howard Dean scream. There will be money in all of them.
Do we have that sound?
No, I will not do that for you.
But if you're James Tallarico, you have 12 weeks to campaign against Ken Paxton. Tallarico. Oh my goodness, excuse me, it's getting late. But think about it. He is a seminarian. He appeals to a conservative, a Christian kind of voter. Paxton has, I covered his impeachment down in Texas, and you saw these diehard conservatives who believed that Paxton was the moral, the faithful candidate, and then went in front of the Senate and said, look, I think this is incredibly corrupt. The things that I saw when I worked for him were incredibly corrupt. And there was not a huge, in this impeachment hearing, there was not a lot of effort to discredit these witnesses, these diehard Republicans who worked for him for many years and were whistleblowers against him. There was just a desire to keep him in the job. Yeah. So you put one of those people in a campaign ad, or even you just take the footage from Texas Senate impeachment hearings and you put it in a campaign ad and say something different. I mean, this is a boon for him.
Not a lot.
Absolutely.
I mean, none of these guys actually got a Trump endorsement, though. And I'm not sure if that's because the president didn't actually want to endorse anybody, or he just didn't know who was actually going to win, John.
Maybe all of the above, right? There's like,
let me just interrupt you for a moment. Ken Paxton is not unlike Donald Trump as a candidate, right?
They share some flaws and maybe share some strengths. But some of the things that we were talking about in terms of the scandals that have affected Ken Paxton are also things that have affected Donald Trump, or that Donald Trump has affected in terms of his personal life. So, I mean, I think it would be weird for Trump to criticize Paxton over his personal peccadillos or whatever you want to call it. It's way too late for that kind of a word. Although Jane said seminarian before, so I figured
seminarian is a much better word.
I had to get like a multisyllabic thing in there. But I think that it's hard for Trump to make that criticism. At the same time, I don't think Trump loved the idea of getting behind John Cornyn, who is seen by a lot of MAGA voters as insufficiently loyal to MAGA-ism, and a little bit of an anachronism of a time of the George W. Bush Texas Republican Party. I'm not sure there was a win for Trump in getting involved, and I'm pretty sure that Trump didn't think there was a win for Trump in getting involved either.
Yes,
he wants a winner.
Winning by doing this, because he stays silent, and all of these candidates have to move closer to him because they have to be as Trumpy as possible.
Right.
And then Trump gets to come in the runoff and declare the winner.
Well, as we're speaking of Trump endorsements, if you look briefly to North Carolina, Senator Thom Tillis was not running for re-election. Michael Whatley got the Trump endorsement, right? Former RNC chair. He pulls through, Natasha.
He pulls through. I mean, I can't say I was completely, surprised by that one. That one, is a little bit more. We know now what we're dealing with in that state. It is going to be another state that's so interesting. Not as red, obviously, as Texas, but North Carolina is another one that, we heard this so much in 2024. Oh, Kamala Harris is going to take North Carolina. It's finally going to go blue in a presidential race. It hadn't since the first Obama, and nope. Trump took it. He did better. So but having a former governor now running for the Democrats, I mean, it is going to be, Republicans have, I mean, I take your point, John, there's money here and there's money there. I think, especially in the presidential race, that's true. Yeah. But I don't know. It'll be, Republicans certainly have an advantage like they've never had before with money. So we're going to see that. We're going to see that playing out.
So we're going to talk about the Dem Senate race in a moment, but we're getting some new results in. And I want to go to Steve Korecki with those. What do we got, Steve?
We've got cliffhangers galore when it comes to House incumbents here. So, I'll start here. I might as well because I got it teed up here. Tony Gonzalez, Republican, 23rd District. This is, right along the Rio Grande, the border here, from the San Antonio suburbs to the El Paso suburbs. Gonzalez leading here with about 2/3 of the vote in. Wow. But there's been some signs. The race is really, I think, going to be decided right in here. Half the vote comes right out of Bexar County. This is San Antonio suburbs. And another about 25% is going to come out of the two counties right to the west here. So let's just show you Bexar County here because Gonzalez is leading, okay? And there's more vote to come. It's the same day. The trouble for Gonzalez is this. In 2024, he narrowly defeated the same opponent, Brandon Herrera, in the Republican primary. He won it by this much. When he did that, he won Bexar County, biggest part of the district, by 8 points. You can see right now his margin is 6.5. The problem for him is this same day vote has been trending toward Herrera. If that continues, it's a huge if, but if that continues, then this 6.5 is going to continue to come down. And Gonzalez isn't going to get anything like he got in 2024 out of Bexar County when Bexar County saved him from a challenge from Herrera. So let's see what happens as the more same-day vote comes in here. But Gonzalez needs it to turn around. 6.5 may not be enough for him out of there, and anything less than that's going to put him in big danger. But not as much danger as right now. Dan Crenshaw is in the 2nd district here. This is the northern suburbs of Houston. Crenshaw, the only House incumbent Republican in Texas without Trump's endorsement in this race. Steve Toth, a state legislator from, this is Montgomery County here. This is a little bit more than half of the district, and you could see he is just running up the score over Crenshaw here in Montgomery County. The other half of the district, roughly, is in Harris County, northern Houston suburbs here, closer, but Toth leading here. Again, it's just same-day vote to come in. It's a clear advantage for Toth. The only question is somehow you see it doesn't add up to 100. There are some minor candidates. Texas is a runoff state. It's not just if Toth finishes first, he's got to finish above 50 to win it tonight. But wow, everything he's been seeing tonight has been super encouraging for him and super, super discouraging for Dan Crenshaw. There's going to be an incumbent who loses in this district, a battle of incumbents in the 18th district. 2 Democrats, Christian Menifee elected like 5 weeks ago, Al Green a lot longer ago than that. It's going to come down. This is Houston. It's going to come down to the same-day vote here. You can see the vote is tracking toward Menifee. Would need to turn around in a big way. Otherwise, Al Green is going down. Put a pin in this one because this is Dallas County where you've been talking about all those issues with the vote count. We don't know how long it's going to take, but we got the early vote. Julie Johnson, not what she wanted to see in it. Colin Allred trying to win back a seat that he used to hold. Double-digit lead in the early vote there. Again, we'll see when that gets resolved, but that's not a good start if you're Julie Johnson. And then over in North Carolina, wow, there's just a scattering of votes left, but Valerie Foushee, 2-term incumbent, facing a challenge from the candidate she beat the first time she won the seat in 2022. In that Democratic primary, it's been razor thin all night, but with almost nothing left, Foushee is hanging on, a 1,200 vote lead, 1% for her.
That seems like, that's closer than we thought it was going to be. Or, she's definitely narrowed the gap a lot, hasn't she, Steve?
Yeah, no, if you're Foushee, you're feeling as good as you can feel. Alam, yeah. Well, no, this was, look, again, this is a rematch from 2022. In 2022, this was a 9-point race. This district was redrawn, part of that broader Republican push to redraw the lines, across North Carolina here. I think there was some thought here. I'll show you over in Durham County. This is Alam's base. She's a Durham County commissioner, Duke University, is here. 5-point, a little bit less than a 5-point win for Alam in Durham County. She did better than this in 2022 in her own backyard. The first time she ran against Foushee than she did tonight. I think there was a thought that she would do a little bit better in Durham. And there might have been a thought, too, just looking at the energy in the party. Again, she had that Sanders endorsement. She had made the past pro-Israel support of Foushee issue. There was a thought that in a district like this, which is overwhelmingly Democratic, that the energy might be more on Alam's side this time. And she was much better funded Alam this time than she was last. But again, Foushee has been proving resilient tonight.
So kind of the narrative that we had been talking about, both behind the scenes and in front as well, about Democrats maybe supporting more of the progressive candidate, that's not bearing out there when it comes to Alam, who had the Sanders endorsement and money behind her.
Yeah, super, super tight. There's certainly plenty of support for her. She's going up against an incumbent, but I would just say, Foushee has been, every update we've had tonight here, she's gotten just enough.
By the way, if you listened to the podcast earlier today, Korecki only drinks water. So go have a glass of water, Korecki, and I'll get back to you. But he doesn't drink too much, and you can guess why he doesn't drink too much, because he's been on the air for so long. I'll get back to you in a second, Korecki. Thank you. Jon Allen, you're chomping at the bit to talk. You've been moving around in your chair a little bit. What do you want to say?
Well, I was looking at Valerie Foushee there in North Carolina, and so 2 things. One, I think you make a good point about the question of how progressivism is doing. There's another axis on which this is being fought, which is generational lines. Democrats are sick of old Democrats. Democratic voters are sick of old Democratic lawmakers.
Right.
And Valerie Foushee is about 69 years old, and Alam is much younger. So I think that's another piece.
We don't need to be ageist.
But the dam didn't break.
Yeah. It didn't break.
It did not break for Valerie Foushee in North Carolina, and I think that's interesting, and I think it probably speaks to the establishment of the Democratic Party still being stronger than its insurgent wing in a lot of parts of the country in a way that the Republican Party, the establishment has not been, right? Like the establishment party, the Republican Party got destroyed by Donald Trump. I also think just looking at some of those Texas House races, Dan Crenshaw lost the Trump endorsement and lost any chance of winning. And then fascinating, Tony Gonzalez in Texas with a huge scandal, the alleged affair, breaking late, and now probably getting forced into a runoff. He may be before the ethics committee in the House very soon because they had a blackout through this primary date where the ethics committee could not move on him. Because the runoff is so long, they will have an opportunity starting tomorrow morning to investigate him and to potentially have findings against him. It'll be interesting to see whether Speaker Mike Johnson wants that to happen, if they want to get rid of him, if they think that he's too much of an albatross because of this really crazy story that folks should probably click on somewhere, because there's some parts I'm leaving out here for family television.
Best you leave it out.
Yeah, but the point is there could be an ethics committee move on Tony Gonzalez as early as tomorrow.
So I keep saying go to YouTube, ask some questions, and we've gotten some questions. Jane, I'm going to lob this question over to you. The question is, we have seen much higher than average turnout for Democrats. Historic numbers in Texas, by the way. I think we're cresting over 2 million at this point when it comes to Democrats, and that was a couple hours ago. What kind of news does this spell for the general election? Let me add on to that. So for the midterms and then obviously the general in 28. I mean, if you've got Democratic enthusiasm, what does that mean?
I mean, it's not just Democratic enthusiasm. This is just unparalleled growth in both registered voters and people who are turning out. I will say there's a couple of things happening here. One, it's just an interesting primary. Yeah. You know what I mean? Democrats often get one chance, but not two really prominent candidates who have a lot of money and support and firepower. So I think there's a desire to weigh in. If whoever wins can pull all of those people together. Democrats have been saying for 15 years that Texas can go purple. We'll see if that actually pans out. But if you can turn out voters,
since I've been talking about politics, the story has been, can Texas go purple?
I mean, I wrote that story the first time, 15 years ago here?
Is it this time? Is it this
NBC?
Time?
But I mean, all of that combined, I will say, the numbers are really big. I mean, you look at some of the early voting turnout, and it's twice what it was the previous midterm election. You know what I mean? There's just a lot of people who are turning out. Voter registration has surged for both parties, though. So it is important to say there's just a lot more voters in general. Yeah. But let's see how we go.
I got another question for Steve Korecki from YouTube. So I want to go to him so long as he is standing by and can take it. Steve, you up and running? Can we come to you? Oh, we don't have Steve. Okay, because this is a question actually I think only Steve can answer. I want to talk about...
Now I want to know what it is. Is it a personal question?
No, it's about the type of people that we're turning out, right? It's young voters, suburban voters, Latino voters, and whether or not that's going to hold through November. You guys don't have the answers to that question, but I believe Steve does if he's taken a look at those counties, hence why I want to ask him that question. So stay tuned, that question is coming, everybody. But if we look at James Tellerico and Jasmine Crockett, because we haven't really gotten into that aside from what is happening in Dallas County and what has not come in so far, there's not a lot of daylight, Natasha, between their issues, right, and where they stand on things. This was really about, for Democratic voters, the type of person they wanted to represent them in the state of Texas as a senator. And by the way, who they feel like could actually beat either a Ken Paxton or a John Cornyn. How are you seeing that bear out in our results so far? Because obviously it's not called yet.
Right. I mean, with that caveat, obviously. But you have, one thing that was the X factor all along here was the Latino vote. Where were they going to, where was that going to go? And I think what we're seeing so far in these results is that Tellerico was able to really bring them into his coalition. As Steve was saying earlier, he also ate into, some of Crockett's, stronghold. But to get that Latino vote, that is really something. And, for Democrats, probably very encouraging looking, toward a general election. If he can also pick up, again, we will start back with the seminarian. He was so unique, and in part because he was able to bring in this Christianity. And he came out, and one of the things that really put him on the national stage was that he said, no 10 commandments in schools Why? Because it was unchristian. And that was his argument. And it really took off.
Wow.
And his argument was, hey, does Jesus want to keep out somebody who's Muslim? Does he want to alienate someone who is Jewish? And the answer was no. And he ended up losing that fight, but it really put him on the stage. And I think what we thought with Tallarico was, could he be a Beto O'Rourke type person where he's sort of the media favorite, the media darling, but can't really go beyond that. Then he had this Colbert moment a couple of weeks ago,
which raised him a heck of a lot.
So much money. I think it was over $2.5 million in one night.
Yeah, and you couple that as well with the Joe Rogan endorsement, right? He sat down with Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan essentially said, "Hey, buddy, you should run for president of the United States." You think about the breadth that Joe Rogan has, the listenership that Joe Rogan has, who has shown up on Joe Rogan's show, obviously in the last election, and it wasn't Kamala Harris, it was Donald Trump. But then you have Jasmine Crockett, who some could argue, despite the fact that she is very left, very progressive, is also to a certain extent fighting and speaking as if she is President Donald Trump, right? She fights a little bit like Donald Trump.
She has a very Trumpian way of talking.
Yeah.
I mean, you hear her talk about these voting issues in Texas, in Dallas. And I mean, tomorrow I am almost certain we're going to hear her say something to the effect of this is voter fraud. She's going to go past voter disenfranchisement.
Yeah.
She already called it a fast one well before this election started. She said Republicans are pulling a fast one.
Yeah.
And what actually happened is that Dallas Republicans wanted to hand count their ballots. Now, hand counting ballots is really time consuming, really ineffective, and really inaccurate. Dallas Republicans who are buying into the election conspiracy theories that the machines are insecure. At the end of the day, Dallas Republicans did the financial math and realized they couldn't get all the people there and they couldn't get all the money to pay for it because it is so hard to do. And they went back to the machines. But that's why we have precinct level voting in that county. That's how we have thousands of people sort of disenfranchised. I mean, we knew this was going to be an issue. But I do want to go back to something Natasha said. The idea that it's that Christian conservative, the conservative Democrat, the crossover voter who might be listening to Rogan. I mean, that is what the congressional map in Texas was drawn on, the Hispanic voters that Trump pulled into his party in 2024. So that map gets a lot weaker if those voters are at the top of the ticket going for a Democrat. You know, these are split ticket voters, so people can pick and choose how they want to vote. But I do think you can see a lot of things start to crumble if this all comes together for Democrats.
John, I know you want to say something, but I want to call for more questions first, and we're going to go to Korecki, and it's Korecki, so you're going to have to hold on for a second.
I yield.
Again, we want to hear from you guys. We want to get your questions. You just saw it. I'm asking the questions on air, so submit them. Post a question on our YouTube page, and we're going to try and work it in. Use the photo app to scan the code below, and then it's going to take you right there, and you can post your questions, and I will ask them to the ever important Steve Korecki, who I'm going to go back to now, who is now in front of that big wall once again. And walk us through, Korecki. Let's talk House races now and where we're at with things there.
Yeah, great timing is. There it is.
Great.
Steve Toth projected to defeat Dan Crenshaw in the Republican primary. You have an incumbent going down in a House race. Dan Crenshaw, the only Republican incumbent in Texas, running without Donald Trump's endorsement. Wow, does it show in these results? Really kind of a landslide. And it was just, this would have been called a lot sooner if they counted votes faster in Harris County and Montgomery County. But really an overwhelming verdict here. It's an interesting part of the state in Texas politically here. Again, this district is split about half between the northern suburbs of Houston and Harris County. You see Toth there by about 9 points currently. And then this, a little bit more on this side, Montgomery County, the Woodlands, that's where Toth is from. And this is a very interesting area. It's just dramatically, quickly growing. They've added hundreds of thousands of people in the last 10, 20 years there. And it's become one of the most conservative, most Republican, large counties in America. Donald Trump won a larger raw vote plurality in Montgomery County, Texas, than any other county in America in 2024. And so maybe it's fitting that in Trump's best county, the one Republican incumbent he didn't endorse is getting trounced, and it's cost him his seat.
Korecki, I got a YouTube question for you before we discuss what you just mentioned, because that's a big one. I think Dan Crenshaw, that call. By the way, Dan Crenshaw was the one, as Korecki just said, not endorsed by President Donald Trump. This YouTube question is, where did Democratic turnout come from? Young voters, suburban voters, Latino voters, and can it hold through November? I assume you cannot answer the second part of that question, but you can answer the first part.
Yeah, and well, in the other issue, let me call it the Democratic race. Unfortunately, we don't have an exit poll in this one, so we're taking guesses, and some of this we're going to have to really. It's not an exciting answer. We're going to have to look at some precinct stuff tomorrow. But I mean, broadly, what we can see here, like I said, is to me. This is the kind of thing it shows you. Look at the overall turnout in this race, sitting there 1.7, 1.8 with a lot more to come. It's going to be over 2 million easily. It's massive turnout. It's a story we know, though, I think, in a way. We know that any time there's an election, certainly in the Trump era, Democratic voters flood the polls. They particularly flood the polls in places like Travis County. Okay, this is overwhelmingly Democratic. This is right around the state capital, Austin, University of Texas. This is James Tallarico's political base as well here. He got a monster number. He got monster turnout here. You're talking about the demographic here in the Democratic Party in particular is sort of a more upscale voters with college degrees, white-collar professionals, very anti-Trump, very engaged politically, high information consuming, and they crawl over coals for the opportunity to vote and see every election as a chance to kind of vote against Republicans. We've been talking about that in special elections, in primaries, races for state Supreme Court in Wisconsin, and I think we're talking about it in this race, in this Democratic race in Texas tonight. So I think the Democratic energy is going to be there in November. I don't think there's any question about that. These things reinforce it. I think the thing Democrats maybe have to grapple with here out of Texas tonight is what happened on the Republican side what they thought was going to happen. Cornyn continues to run in first place right here. Yeah. We continue to track the same day vote. Paxton's leading it, but only by a small amount. The possibility that Cornyn comes out in first place tonight, goes to the runoff with some momentum, and may still have a chance of emerging as the Republican nominee. How much of the Democratic hopes in Texas were premised on Ken Paxton being the nominee and Ken Paxton being the one having the big night tonight? This is a piece of the puzzle. It's not, these aren't Democratic voters, but this is not something I think Democrats were necessarily counting on tonight.
They're not feeling maybe as good about Texas, the Texas Senate race, as they were maybe a few hours ago when they thought Paxton might pull through. Korecki, stand by for me. John, I want to talk about Daniel Crenshaw, right? I mentioned the only guy who did not get the Trump endorsement. They differ on a bunch of stuff. Foreign relations to be one of them, the war in Ukraine, for instance. What does that say about the fact that he lost and did not get the Trump endorsement? What can we take away from that?
So number one, I think you're talking about an Afghanistan veteran, a U.S. Navy SEAL, somebody who has been, for the most part, very supportive of the Trump agenda. To your point, there have been some breaks. The big break, though, wasn't about real policy. The big break was about Dan Crenshaw not supporting Donald Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election. That was the fissure in their relationship. It was the break that Crenshaw had with the MAGA movement. What does it mean from the perspective of Trump not endorsing him? I think we see it in the result there. 57% for his opponent, 39% for Crenshaw, a longtime incumbent. The president chose not to endorse against Crenshaw, and maybe he was concerned that Crenshaw would actually win, even if he endorsed against him, or that there was some other reason not to do it. But even just not making that endorsement while he endorsed all of the rest of the Texas delegation for re-election was a permission structure for all of the MAGA voters to go out there and vote against Crenshaw. So I think that's what we saw, and it's a warning to other Republican candidates, as we've seen time and time again with Donald Trump. He cares less about whether his party wins in the general election, not that district's going to be difficult, than he does about fealty to him, about loyalty to him from each of the individual candidates.
Jade, as we're talking about House races here, right, I just want to give folks the lay of the land here. For Democrats to take back control of the House, they have to flip 3 House seats, and then they have to hold on to all their Senate seats and then flip 4, right? They're going to have an uphill battle in the Senate. The House seems like it's more in reach. If we're talking about redistricting, right, that is a big story, it seems, that's coming out of the House races, specifically in Texas, although there's still a lot of races that are outstanding. The president called on the state GOP to redraw the map last year. Give us a run through of what happened there and how you're seeing it bear out in some of these races so far.
Yeah, Trump did not like the math that he was going into. Midterms favor the party that's not in the White House. And he asked Republicans in Texas to change the map.
Yeah.
Change the math, rather. And they went out and they drew 5 more seats, they say, that Trump would have won, that Republicans can then go win. But you can't just draw maps. You got to win seats. And that's the thing that we're going to see play out here, is that, some of these seats, the map was drawn by a Washington consultant. It was not drawn by the state legislature there. And I think you see some of these places where it's a soft map in many ways, that you could see a dummy mander is something, it's often called. The idea that you draw it and it's going to help the other party. A dummy mander instead of a gerrymander.
Okay.
But
because they don't actually know what they're doing in drawing these maps?
No, just that the seat might not perform.
Okay.
Because it's only as consistent as your base. And Trump's base isn't always consistent when he's not on the ballot. But
consistent in showing up? Or
consistent in showing up and who they're voting for.
Okay.
I mean, let's go to
down ballot.
Down ballot. Let's go to the 28th district.
Yeah.
This is a district where the seat that they drew, it was redistricted to meet a political aim. They drew a district that if Trump had been, if these districts existed when Trump was on the ballot, it would have been a 10+ Trump seat.
Yeah.
But they actually moved more of Henry Cuellar's voters into that district. So it made it easier for him to win. And then Trump went and pardoned him, so he's not going to spend his spring campaigning and defending against, money laundering charges. So he's looking pretty good. Cook Political Report says that one is leaning towards the Democrats, even though that's one of the seats that Republicans count as one of their wins. So, these seats have to be won. And across the country, this is going to be an issue because it's not just Republicans who have to win them, it's Democrats too.
Yeah.
They say they have 5 seats in California, but it could be 4 to 5 seats. Not all of these seats are rock solid for either party.
Right.
But there's a world in which you see Democrats draw 10 new districts and Republicans draw 10 new districts. And it's essentially a wash. And we're back to a net 3 difference in the House of Representatives. I mean, I keep wondering how much is there any buyer's remorse? I mean, you've had a lot of reporting on this.
Yeah. So,
John?
Within the Republican Party, there's definitely some buyer's remorse.
Redistricting, there's buyer's remorse.
Yeah, well, yes, there is a belief that it may backfire among some Republicans. The White House will insist, and the White House advisors, Trump advisors, they'll all insist that they did the right thing, they did the smart thing. Here's what they did.
Okay.
In Texas. First of all, broadly, they started a war over redistricting that may backfire in terms of California redrawing, Virginia redrawing, et cetera. But specific to Texas, and Jane mentioned this before, but I want to underline it, they based the way that they redrew the Texas map on Donald Trump's performance in 2024 as if that would be repeated in Texas in 2026 and in 2028 and 2030.
Whereas that's an anomaly to a certain extent.
Donald Trump got more votes than any Republican has ever got for president of the United States.
Yeah.
He ran up the score with Hispanic voters who, as a group, may feel a little differently than they did in 2024 after we have watched the economic program of Donald Trump not do what he said it would do, and watched the immigration program of Donald Trump not just cut off the border, but execute a mass deportation campaign that has included the arrest, incarceration, violence against people who are legal immigrants and even American citizens, not just people who are here undocumented. So I think the idea that the Hispanic vote is like sort of locked away for Trump and the Republicans for a long time, meaning that they will do as well as they did in 2024, you'd have to prove it to me before I'd believe it, and I don't think that's likely to happen. In talking to people who are close to Trump, who advised Trump on the redistricting, even a few months ago, they were saying that they had now advised him that there was a scenario where it could be as bad as a wash for the Republicans who decided to have this fight. And I will tell you, if they're telling Donald Trump that the worst case scenario is a wash, the worst case scenario is worse than that for Republicans.
So is there a sense, you feel like, Natasha, within that camp that they may back off efforts for further redistricting? Because, I mean, we have all been talking about the fact that Republicans were going to literally make this their campaign over the next 2 years in the lead up to 2028.
Well, they had the embarrassments in Indiana, and then Democratic states started saying, okay, well, we can do it too. And we saw what happened in California.
Yeah.
And once Indiana sort of, said no. Illinois fell in line as well, and said they didn't want to really do this. They were only going to do it if Indiana did. So to that extent, yeah, it was it wasn't.
We'll do it if you do.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. Well, and
You
that's
first.
That's what Newsom
You
said
first.
too. We won't do it if you don't do it.
Yeah.
And he was arguing that with Texas and the Texas lawmakers, and they said we're doing it. So because of Indiana in particular, I think there was just like this, there is a backlash. And how embarrassing is that to the White House that, he's so used to having that wall, no cracks. And there were lots of cracks showing at that time. Yeah. So why keep going down that road?
Yeah.
Unless they can get away with it and it's fairly easy.
I mean, they're going to keep going down the road
They're gonna
this
keep
year.
going down- yeah.
Florida's going to go
They have
this
to.
year. Virginia's trying
They
to
can't
go
stop the
for
train.
Democrats. They have to go to the voters to ask for this. But Florida wants to do it, despite the fact that their constitution says that you can't go partisan gerrymander. They very much want to go and gerrymander, and they say that it's, for reasons other than partisan names. But
You can't get more Trumpy than Florida,
And there's so much incentive for all these people. Look at Gavin Newsom. He won 2025. Now, he'd rather win 2027, 2028 for the Democrats, but he had the best year of any Democrat because he said, I'm going to redistrict and I might be able to get my party 5 seats.
Because they felt as if he fought, basically, to a certain
Exactly.
extent. Right. It's about like the fighting mentality, which, though, doesn't seem to be bearing out for Jasmine Crockett so far.
But do you think that this turnout is not motivated at least in part by the fact that a bunch of Democrats don't feel like they have a choice in who they send to Congress this
I'm
year?
not thinking, I'm just asking the questions.
No, I'm just saying. I got in a double negative there, and it was just a mess.
Also, Crockett did get in, later.
Yeah.
Tellerker was ahead. He's been getting a ton of free press for a while, and as you mentioned, some pretty critical. With Rogan. So there are like pretty vast differences there. I think we will see elsewhere that there are some fighters that ended up coming through. But you're right, it's not across the board. We can't say one way or another.
Steve Korecki, I'm going back to you. I'm reaching for a jelly bean while I do it because I'm starting to get a little hungry. And it's a little hot in here as well, by the way. For those of you at home that are just listening and not watching, it's a little steamy. But if you're watching, I don't know.
there's snacks.
Not where I'm going
It's a
with
new
this.
type of
Not
After
where-
Hours podcast
not sure I'm
now.
going with
Thanks,
this.
Yasmin.
Exactly. Korecki, there's some other races that we haven't touched upon, right? The other House races, bring us up to date on what we're missing here that you think is important for us to understand when it comes to a through line of what's coming out of Texas and North Carolina as well. And then, of course, the governor as well. What are we seeing there in Texas?
Yeah, I mean, one of the House races here, it's not a very close primary tonight, but I think this district is going to loom very large nationally in November. 34th district. This is a Democratic-held district. Vicente Gonzalez is the Democratic incumbent. This is very much a part of that story of Deep South Texas along the border, heavily Hispanic counties that have swung very hard towards Trump. So much that Republicans, this is part of their redrawing efforts. They believe this is a Democratic seat they can flip. They drew it to become Trump would have won this district under its new configuration by 11 points. So a Democrat's trying to hang on here. And this Republican primary was interesting tonight because you had Mayra Flores, who's part of this story of this history of recent history in Deep South Texas. She actually won a special election to Congress a couple years ago, served for a few months. She ran for a full term against Vicente Gonzalez, lost narrowly, came back in 2024, lost narrowly again. She's out running for a third time, but the Republican Party, state leaders in Texas, national leaders in Washington said, 2 times was enough. They wanted a different candidate. Same last name, by the way, Eric Flores, no relation. And it looks like they're on track to get their candidate in this race. So I think that sets up here Republican redistricting in Texas. This is a district they targeted. This is the candidate they wanted. And this is part of that story of that, Trump growth with Hispanic voters, especially along the border, especially in Deep South Texas, versus Democrats saying, hey, we're starting to win some of those voters back. Trump now, once he's back in the White House, there's a backlash building. So what's going to give there in a district? Again, the way this is drawn now, Trump would have won this district by 11 points. Republicans get their candidate. Let's see how Vicente Gonzalez holds up, I should say, because this is a race that I think it's going to be very close, and we're going to be talking about and watching nationally for the next few months.
Governor and final thoughts, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, we can call up here, let me make sure I get this right. Greg Abbott, again, against nominal opposition here, going for another term there on the Republican side. No surprise on the Democratic side. Again, this is sort of nominal opposition, so it's the matchup, I think, that we were all kind of expecting, and we're going to get here. But I think it's the Senate race folks will end up talking about nationally a little bit more.
I got one question for you from YouTube. Korecki. What is written on Steve's rolled up paper? Magic spells, fuzzy bath, the first page of the new mystery thriller he's writing?
If only I were that talented. These are vote targets in the 23rd district for Tony Gonzalez.
And is it the same paper that you've been holding the whole time?
No, we got vote targets for the Senate race. We got the Republican primary, spilled water. We got North Carolina. So there you go.
Everyone should go out and buy Steve Korecki's excellent book, The Red and the Blue. If you're looking for a book to buy that Steve Korecki wrote, there is one that you should have on your shelf.
Okay, I'm being yelled at by my executive producer that we have 4 minutes left. Korecki, you're the best. Thank you, my friend.
Give
we all
Jon Allen
appreciate
$20 for me. That's very kind.
And tell Adam Naboa, your producer as well. He did a fantastic job, and great to see him on the big screen. Guys, we got a couple minutes left, so I kind of want to get your final thoughts on this historic night, the first of the midterms season, Texas, North Carolina, and Arkansas kind of kicking us off. Jon Allen.
Good Lord, stick with this all year for this podcast, because this was a heck of a kickoff. You've got an incumbent going down in a primary, maybe multiple incumbents going down. You've got a dogfight going on between Cornyn and Paxton on the Republican side there. You have a close race with tons of people showing up for Democrats in the Senate race in Texas. This is going to be a fascinating election year. And everyone is so plugged in and everyone is so engaged. And this was just the kind of night. I mean, obviously it would have been nice to get results a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
But just the kind of night that sort of whets the appetite for those of us that are, not only love politics and are fascinated by it, but really understand how much politics means in terms of the substance of what's going on in our lives.
One word takeaway for tonight. Jon Allen, define the night. In
Wild.
One word. Wild. Okay, let's go with that. Jane?
I'm your election policy reporter, so all I am seeing is just how much efforts to change what happens at the ballot box before the voters go and cast their ballots is influencing voter experience, is influencing the outcome. I'm talking about redistricting, drawing the maps in order to get a predetermined outcome, as well as conspiracy theories that motivated a major change in Dallas County and left thousands of people going to the wrong place. And I'm a mom, I don't have a lot of time. If I go and try and vote, I don't know if I have time to keep going.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who may have just chosen not to vote. But of course, we had huge
big
turnout.
deal.
So
Yeah.
a lot of people did turn out.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of people trying to put a foot on the scale of democracy in this country. And I think it's really interesting to see how voters engage with that.
Any Republicans or Democrats looking at these races, Jamin, and saying, okay, we need to rethink this thing?
Not this year.
Nothing bore out.
I don't see, redistricting going anywhere. I think that Republicans have committed and are going to see it through.
Yeah. Natasha?
I'm gonna, go back to the economy, which is where we always end up, right, in every election. Yeah. And, to the extent that there was a through line, I think when you look at Tallarico, when you look at people like in North Carolina 11, Jamie Ager, they focused a lot on the accounting. Tallarico's messaging was a lot about the billionaire class. Ager talked about the billionaire class. He also talked about the Epstein class.
Yeah.
And,
we didn't even bring up Epstein in this conversation.
I got him in at the end. But think about all of those issues. And I'll bring up one more, which is ICE. And I think this is really, just point this out really quickly. State representative, so down ballot race, North Carolina, Carla Cunningham, 7-time incumbent, just ousted. 70%, she lost 22% to 70% to somebody. She made a deciding vote to allow ICE, to allow local police, to compel local police to cooperate with ICE. Charlotte's Web was something that went through North Carolina. It was wildly unpopular, and it flew out of there really, really quickly, presumably because Republicans were saying to the White House, this is not going well with people.
Yeah.
That's kind of indicative. So I mean, to the extent that we are looking at really local issues that is impacting people where they are, and that's the economy.
Yeah.
In North Carolina specifically, that was an ICE issue.
Steve Korecki, thank you, wherever you are. Hopefully you're in the car on your way home already. Natasha Korecki, thank you. Timm, thank you. Jon Allen, thank you. That is a wrap, everybody, for Here's the Scoop from NBC News. I'm Yasmin Vossoughian. Thank you for watching. You can rewatch on YouTube or listen anywhere you get your podcast tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. And make sure to subscribe. If you like what you're watching or what you heard, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you tomorrow after whatever happens overnight.